Welcome back. Great to have you with us on SABC News' Prime Biz. Now, President Donald Trump of the U.S. has pledged that the U.S. will show flexibility to real friends concerning planned steel and aluminium tariffs ahead of an expected signing ceremony to finalize controversial measures that he wants to introduce. Canada is the single largest supplier of both steel and aluminium to the United States, and it says that any tariffs would be totally unacceptable. The prospect of retaliatory tariffs or a trade war being sparked by Trump's proposed tariffs have rattled financial markets. We were looking at that before the break. Now, President Trump tweeting today that he is looking forward to the meeting at 3:30 p.m. U.S. time at the White House. We have to protect and build our steel and aluminium industries, he says, while at the same time showing great flexibility and cooperation towards those that are real friends and treat us fairly on both trade and the military. So those talks or that ceremony at 10:30 p.m. South African time, so a little later, but markets are waiting for the outcome. Joining me now to talk about what these could mean for world markets, for us as well, our correspondent in Washington, Nina Marie Potts. Thank you for being with us, Nina. So it always seems like Trump is very strong. He comes out guns blazing. Then someone in the White House resigns and there's confusion and controversy. And now, does this look like a bit of a softening that will show great flexibility? Is it a comeback to some extent?
I think you're certainly right that if you look at the trajectory of his first term, his first year in office, he has often gone out of his way to ramp up the rhetoric and then stepped away from the abyss. I don't think that that's what we're seeing here. I think he has deliberately decided to pick the most dangerous fight that he can have with China, and despite speculation, thanks also to his tweet that you cited just now, that he will exempt a couple of countries, most countries will be pretty hard hit. I think anyone that exports steel.
He's even starting, I mean, this is huge for Canada, a neighbor that surely imports a lot of goods from the United States. So what's motivating the like you say, the apt rhetoric?
There is one country, and that is China.
So it's all about China.
I think it is, yeah. And watching America pick a fight with China is a bit like watching two elephants in a room. And for sort of smaller countries who are standing on the sidelines, they're going to be extremely anxious that they're about to be crushed. And I mean, the reason that I say that I think he's serious about this particular maneuver is that there are two ways that he could have gone with this particular fight with China. There's one camp inside the White House administration that believes that he should not have imposed tariffs or picked a fight with China because the risks are too high, it's simply too dangerous. There's another camp inside the administration that believes that it's time to punish China, that China for years has been stealing high-tech Intel designs, blueprints from the United States, that it's time for the United States to send a signal to get those crown jewels back and target the industries of the future as a way to retaliate and a way to strike China. He's decided not to go that route, but instead do something rather alarming instead.
Yeah, and there may be sympathy from people involved in steel in South Africa, because we've suffered because of the cheap Chinese imports coming in. That's been a concern for years, but the fear is that countries around the world will up their tariffs. They won't let in US goods. Could he be shooting the US in the foot? He was in Davos, I was there earlier this year, saying, please, we want to trade. So it's a very hard balance.
It's certainly a climate of change. It's particularly dangerous because America has traditionally been the referee on global trade. America is the one that has
strong on free trade.
And strong on free trade, upheld the rules, made sure that everybody played by them. He's opened a Pandora's box. If America now decides that it's at liberty to twist the rules as much as it wants, then that leaves the door wide open for other countries to do the same. Anxiety over steel in particular. I mean, I think it's worth pointing out that lots of countries' steel industries have been in decline for some time. They're old they're old industries. They're not the industries of the future.
So maybe not competitive.
And maybe not competitive. So why pick steel and aluminium? Well, he's doing something that is very cheeky and dangerous. he is invoking an old piece of trade law that has not been used for decades. And it's a way of citing national security concerns as grounds to hike up tariffs or impose tariffs on steel. Even the Pentagon does not think that foreign steel poses a national security threat. So he's gone for this very narrow piece of old and outdated trade law for old, outdated industries, because he sees a way of hitting China, striking China quite hard, but also whipping up a global trade war, whatever side of the equation you're on, whether you're free trade or protectionist, which is, I think, going to provoke a lot of anxiety around the world.
So for people who don't know the nitty-gritty, the economics behind it, what does a trade war mean? What would that mean for South Africa, say?
Well, in South Africa's situation, its steel industry, as you know, has been in decline. Nonetheless, its steel exports to the US amount to about $950 million US. So it's not insignificant. And those steel exports go into manufacturing of parts. So the US defense industry will be at risk. There's, of course, the auto industry, and that has provoked, in terms of a global trade war or trade war at large with South Africa, a sharp divide over whether or not consumers of cars will feel the pinch if those prices go up. Will a raise in tariffs or new tariffs make it much more difficult to sell cars? I think experts are divided on that issue. It's the general climate. It's the fact that retaliatory measures are going to come now from the EU. China is obviously very angry. And it's also this question of not playing by the rule book. America, under the Trump administration, President Trump himself, is twisting the intention of these trade rules to suit America now on the basis of a promise that he's going to bring American jobs back. So it's not just about being fair, and it could be harder for us to export. All right, we have to leave it there, but thank you. Nina Maria Potts from our Washington correspondent.